I'm just getting a picture of this so I have people's names. Thank you.
You're welcome to take one if you need one.
Oh,
These
okay.
are for everybody.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Perfect.
Oh, you were saving it.
Ben, Ben, I have Ernie right here. No, he's not. Not as good.
All right, it's 10 o'clock, and we've got a general fund meeting after this meeting, and that chairman was kind enough to cancel his meeting last week so that we could handle the budget. So we're going to try to be respectful to the general fund chair and that committee to be done by 11 o'clock. So it's 10:01, so it's time to start, and we'll get the show on the road, as they say. I do want to skip around today on the agenda, and I'm going to, well, I was going to call on Senator Chastain and Senate Bill 263, but I understand he's got some amendments. You want to tell me about it, Senator?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the amendments are on the way. We met last night and again this morning, trying to get some clarification on some issues to get this bill in a position to talk about this morning.
Okay.
And LSA's, the amendments are on the way up, so we can have.
Do you know what each of the three amendments do?
There's several amendments, and off the top of my head, I can't tell you without looking at them.
Okay. All right. Let's call the roll. Let's see if they come, and maybe we'll start rolling into the public hearing. You do have one on testing that I think's important. Is that correct? An amendment, one of the amendments?
That is in the package of amendments, yes.
Okay. All right. Clerk, call the roll for attendance, please.
Senator Albritton, Senator Butler, Senator Chastain, Senator Figures, Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Melson, Senator Roberts, Senator Schofield, Senator Sessions, Senator Singleton, Senator Smitherman,
Here.
Senator Wagner, Senator Allen, Senator Orr.
All right. We got 12 members present. Appreciate your being here. Appreciate all your hard work last week on the budget, and we will take up the task of getting other bills. We need to get. We got a lot of House bills we need to tackle as well, and some Senate bills still. Seeing no amendments here, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if we could, I'd like to just give an overview.
Okay.
We do have a public hearing on this, I think, this morning.
Okay.
And I can give an overview of some of the changes we've made, and then when
Let's
we
do
get the
that.
amendments, if that'll be
Good
okay.
suggestion, and then we'll get the paper in front of us in due time. So
Okay.
you
All right.
roll on.
Okay, members, some of the changes we have made, obviously, I think you know that the AAA, the Alabama Accountability Act, was first passed in 2013 and was amended again in 2015. What we're doing is making some changes to that bill this year and trying to change some definitions. Here we go. All right, good. We've got some amendments. But I'll go ahead and talk about the changes. Any school that's making has a D or an F on the state report card is a priority school. So we've expanded that. Prior to the expansion here, the failing schools that was listed, the bottom 6%, there were only 79 schools. So what we've tried to do in adding the D and the F schools is expand it to 212 schools that would be eligible for the scholarships. We've raised the poverty level. The previous poverty level was 185%, which allowed a family making $55,000 to be eligible, a family of four. This has been raised. We raised the poverty threshold to 250%, which will allow a family of four to roughly make about $70,000 and be eligible for the scholarships. The amounts in the scholarships previously were elementary school students got $6,000, middle school got $8,000, and high school got $10,000. And what we've moved this year is that it shall not exceed $10,000 per student per year. And then again, every level, yes, sir. And then the cap had been set at 30 million, and we will increase the cap to 40 million. with some language in there that would build an escalator in for another $10 million if the scholarship granting organizations hit a 90% cap for three of the 4 consecutive years. That would, and the cap will eventually max out at 60 million. Right now it's at 30 million. This could take it to 40 million. And then with these escalators in there, it could have another 20 million increase over a period of time. 8 years probably is what it would take to get it to that level. So those are some of the changes that are made, Mr. Chairman.
Did you go over the amendment?
And I would like to take the amendments now, if we can. On page 6 of the bill, we would restore the stricken language on lines 154 and 155. And that says, does not exclusively serve a special population of students. And we had stricken is listed as the lowest 6%. And we replace that with has received a D or an F on line 166 on the most recent state report card.
Mr. President, Chairman, when he gets through.
Okay, let's let him go through his amendment, Senator, and then we'll start
I
taking
have
questions.
questions about each amendment separate, and you asking me to remember every question about all 3 of them. He talked.
Yeah,
That's difficult to do. So I'm gonna have to get and reread it again. Now, if you want to do it, I'll do it your way. But when I get to him, I said, please tell me again what the amendment says.
Be happy to.
So I'll wait, like he said, but I'm just trying to eliminate double reading. But
Okay, again, on page 6, lines 160 and 161, we're capitalizing individual education plan and adding as defined in the Individuals of Disabilities Act or 504 accommodations, that we're adding that we're capitalizing the IEP, Individual Education Plan, and then adding as defined in the Individual with Disabilities Act. On page 8, line 211, there's a technical change. The numbering sequence there after 13, if you'll notice, we skipped from 13 to 15, and that's just a technical change in the bill, getting those numbers in sequence. And then on page 13, line 339, insert the following. And this is an amendment that Senator Singleton and I have talked about, and I think we might still have some questions on that, but we'll continue those discussions. Adding D on is any provisions of subsection C to the contrary notwithstanding, upon recommendation by the local superintendent and approval of the local Board of Education, a priority school shall have the same flexibility provided to a public conversion charter school, so long as a priority school shows growth in student assessments. If the student assessment does not occur within 5 years, flexibility shall be revoked. But we want to ensure that there is growth in this flexibility. And then again, on replacing on page 26. Sorry for these, but it's taken us quite a while to get to this place. Page 26, replace lines 706 through 708. Ensure that at least 75% of first-time recipients of educational scholarships were not continuously enrolled. Okay? That's the language that were changed there, 905 and 913. And then on page 33, the last one here, page 905, line 905 and 913. Annually administer the state achievement test or normally recognized norm reference test. We added that back.
Most spellbinding amendment explanation I've ever heard. So.
Well, there are quite a few in there, Senator. You wanted me to go through them.
That's right. All right. It's been moved by Senator Chastain. Is there a second? Then we're
Mr.
going to go to
Chairman.
Senator Smitherman. Let me get a second.
We moving something that we ain't even got copies or be able to look
We're
at
not
it.
moving anything. We're just putting it before the body for questions. So it's been moved and seconded. Senator Smitherman.
Mr. Chairman, first, I need a copy of these amendments. It's fine to explain and tell me about them, but hey, I don't have a tape recorder to be able to record what he's just saying, and it's unrealistic to expect me to remember 3 amendments, 3 where they are, and the impact and the changes that it's making in a 31 page bill. And I'm sorry, you know, it ain't no ram through, rush through situation.
I don't think
we
so.
talking about, because let me say this quickly. We talking about, if this chart is right, we talking about in 2027 taking $697 million out of the Education Trust Fund.
Sir, this is a different bill. That's
not the bill. That's
No,
the
sir.
first one
We're on the
about.
263, the Chastain Accountability Act of 2013. SB 263.
Okay. All right. But those changes that we are talking about in that bill, I need to really understand those changes and the impact that it has. I mean, we started out saying that it was going to be $30 million when we did this. That's what we said. And now we up to $40 and $50 million taken out of the Education Trust Fund. And you yourself sat in here with us the last meeting and read us a dissertation about how we losing money, how you got to put money back over here to save. And just for the record, you know, we ain't even talked, I don't know what's going to happen to the $750 million. We'll talk about that later on. You got an idea what I'm talking about. It's parked somewhere. But I'm saying that we talking about taking money straight out of public education, and we want to start talking about failing schools. Shit, how they gonna fail? They gonna fail if you don't give them no money. They gonna fail, and we keep taking money out of public education, doing all these beautiful projects, and leaving these kids behind, and don't give a rip about them. Because we ain't increasing their money at all. Show me what we just passed, what we gave them all this money right here overall. We didn't. And y'all know it, and I'm telling the truth. We just keep acting like they are the stepchilds and the people we walk all over in public education to do all these specialty schools, all these to send this money over here and everywhere else. That's right, everything. We ain't doing nothing for public education. Nothing. To do what we did last year ain't nothing, because we got all these extra needs. We don't put on there, we gonna flunk, you know, we gonna flunk the little children at 3rd grade. That's our solution for the public kids. Flunk them. Because that's what we doing. We ain't increased the money at all to the level it needs to be. Our at-risk money ain't even high as it was back in 2008, I think. That's when we hit the height of almost $40 million in at-risk. Pull the budget and see if $40 million there not. No, it's not. Y'all know it. And we want to brag about what we do in this state, and we doing this for education, and we ain't doing nothing for public education. Nothing extra for them. We talking about the scoring, the lower 6%. What is that? The lower 6%, everybody might be at 70. But they the lower 6%, so they'll fail in school. We need an established score that everybody, if you make that score, then you're not a failing school. But right now, no matter what these schools do, if a school over here, I just said, I'll pick out in Jefferson County. You know, you got a school on one end, and we got another school on the other one, and they gonna raise the score and do great. Then that school there may be doing just what we saying at the baseline 70, but they're failing school. That's wrong. We need to start first changing this definition and the criteria for a failing school. It's easy to throw 6% out there. That's the easy way out. But we have a quantitative way of measuring them that if they meet, then they are passed. They're not a failing school. So no, I am just tired of us not doing nothing for public education like we should, and still coming in talking about spending more money for all these other outside extra things. So I need a copy of it. I need to know the impact it's gonna have, and as a committee member, I got a right to get that, because
You should have it at your desk, Senator. It's
Have
two
what at my desk? I don't have nothing at my desk.
2 pages. The amendment is 50XY 33-1.
So they just walked around and put this on my desk just a few minutes ago, because it wasn't on here when he was talking about it. Because I was asking him about this amendment over him for the next bill, and I thought that was it. So I just get this now, and we supposed to crank up and spend all these millions of dollars on something we don't even understand what it does. At least I don't.
All right. And any questions regarding the amendment? All right. It's
I don't
been,
even know what you asked. I just asked it for it to be explained. I would like to contrast what is in the bill now and what this amendment is going to do and change it.
Senator Chastain.
Senator Smitherman, to answer your question, the original bill had the lowest 6% as failing schools. And what we're doing here is changing we're taking that failing school language out, and we're adding a school. We now have the student report cards, A through F, that each school gets. You know where you rank based on your report card. And so what we've done is replace the failing schools with schools that have a D or an F on their last report card, and those are considered the priority schools that we're trying to provide the scholarship for.
Do we know what the scores how they're measured? And I'd say it like this to give you a clear idea. These kids in school, if you make a 70, that's a C. You make a 69, that's a D or D plus or whatever it is. Do we have a quantitative number in the categories where they're being evaluated that they can shoot as a target to reach that number, and not a moving number where it's the lower 6%, so that the standard may be set this year by, I just use the school I work at Ramsey, where they may have a 82, and then so now the failing is based on that. This school comes up 4%, they will be out of the failing scale, but now because we said the 6%, Ramsey goes up to 88. Now that makes them failing again. If that gap, if whatever that criteria that was set, when the good ones do better and they do the same, they drop back down to failing, because the way, if we taking percentage of schools.
Senator, we're removing the 6%. Okay, we're taking that out of the bill. And we're just using the school report cards that each school in the state gets every year.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. I understand about that. What about the next amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Let's address Senator Smitherman's questions, and we'll go to you, Senator Figures.
On the next amendment, we capitalized individual education plan, the IEP. That was it wasn't capitalized in
What's the IEP?
Individual education plan. Each student that has their own individual education plan.
And what we doing with that?
We basically just in the language, let me get to the bill, page 6. Eligible students with unique needs is the category here. A student who satisfies all of the following is subject to an individual education plan.
You don't have to read all of them. I understand now what you're saying. And my question go right back to the beginning of my conversation. What are we doing to increase funding so those schools can provide those individual plans for those students? I know for a fact that the regular money we send these schools is not enough when you got to have one person who may have a mental illness or ADHD or anything else, who needs one person with them to do that. They don't have the money to do that for every one of the students that have those plans. I know that for a fact. So where is the funding? I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm asking the whole committee. Where the funding to handle those students that we are talking about? Where the necessary increase in those fundings, in those budgets, to be able to do that? Anybody can tell me in here? I rest my case, what I said earlier. Would you explain the next one?
Yes, sir. After line 339 on page 13, insert the following new subsection and reletter. And this is what Senator Singleton and I had a discussion about, providing for flexibility. If you remember, when the Accountability Act was passed in 2013, there was a 7-page bill, the flexibility bill, that was a really good piece of legislation, and that got incorporated into the accountability bill. And what the senator's asking is that can these local schools that rank in the priority schools, the D and F, can the superintendent, the local superintendent, and the board approve a flexibility program that works best for the needs of that local school system? It's giving them some flexibility to be able to think outside the box, if you will, on a program that they might think best would work for their students.
That's what that amendment does?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Senator Figures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chastain, the $10,000 scholarships that you spoke about, is that a $10,000 scholarship you're giving to a child who is in a priority school or underperforming school or formerly failing school to take that $10,000 and go to another school or a charter school?
To a qualifying public school or non-public, which would be a private school. And they have to be, these students have to be.
So you're giving them access to come out of that school to go into another school?
Yes, ma'am.
Which is one of those private schools or charter schools? Okay. You know.
Or public.
Or a school that's already a part of the public school system?
Yes.
Well, isn't there a transfer system already in place within the public school system where children can transfer from one public school to another public school in that system?
Yes, under the scholarship program.
No, I'm saying, isn't that already in place?
Yes.
With the Department of Education where they can do that?
Yes.
You know, it just seems to me, with what you all have been doing since 2010, is cruel and unusual punishment to the Alabama public school system. Why don't you just present a bill to do away with it? Because that's what you keep doing. You keep just nudging off of it, nudging off of it, nudging off of it. You're increasing the cap from 30 million to 40 million, which it was something less than that before, and you increased it up to the 30 million. Now it's going up to 40 million. You just gave away $275 million as a rebate, taking money from the Public Education Trust Fund. And yet there's nothing that's been done to help these schools come out of the situation. And I know I sound like a broken record talking about George Hall Elementary School from Mobile. That was a blue ribbon school. So whatever was done for that school at that time, why can't we do that for every school in this state? That's our first priority. But yet we're making it so that people can take money from the Education Trust Fund designated for public schools to go to a private school. And then they take the cream of the crop. And then if they don't perform to their level, they just push them back into the public school system. So I really don't understand it. And I know in talking to some of you one-on-one, you don't agree with that, but then yet you vote on the bills to do it. I'm just so confused. And I just wonder, does it even help that we who are trying to save the children in the public school system, give them the assistance, the tools and the resources they need to be successful, whether it's just all for naught, because you're going to do what you want to do anyway. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. So why do you all continue to do this? That's what I want to know. I mean, do you want to do away with the public school system, not give them the tools and resources they need so that every child in the state is important? Every child deserves an excellent opportunity for an excellent public education, for an excellent education, period. So why do we continue to leave them behind and not put things in place for them? And then there was silence.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Sessions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do have a couple of questions and some inquiries, but I'm thinking, Madam Clerk, we have a public hearing on this bill, correct? How many speakers? Total. Perhaps my questions could be answered in the public hearing, so I'll wait. And just a couple of
All right,
information.
we're going to move on. Senator Melson. All right. Let's move on to the public hearing. And
I just have one question.
Senator Singleton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Senator Chastain, thank you for at least considering the flexibility piece. I really appreciate that. I just want to question is that if we're giving kids $10,000 now at every level, and if they choose a private school, which we at the state has no control over at all, we don't know whether or not those private schools even have certified teachers. We don't even know whether they are failing or not. How do we justify sending our money over to somewhere where we don't have no control or even know what they're going to do with that money once they get there? How do we justify that? I can understand public charter because we do have some control at the state level with that, but how do we control that that's going into a private school? We have no control, and we don't even know whether they're failing schools or not.
Well, I know one thing that we did work on yesterday afternoon was making sure that there was an assessment piece in there for those students that took scholarships and were enrolled in a private school. You know, they're going to be assessed just like public schools, not by the same standards, not by the ACAP, but by the assessment that is currently used in the private schools.
So we're now going to, how do we require private schools to do that if they're private, just because our money is going there? What if only one student go there? Are we just requiring that child take that assessment, or the whole school has to be assessed?
They're taking, if a student enters a private school and they're on the accountability scholarship, they will take the same assessment that the students that are currently enrolled in that private school would take. They're not going to take a different assessment test.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move into the public hearing. We're going to go back and forth. I got Justin Costanza. If you'd come forward. Mary Hooks, you're next after Mr. Costanza. Justin is a proponent. You got 2 minutes, and I will cut you off at 2 minutes. We don't have time to
Absolutely.
go long. So, Mr. Costanza, go ahead.
My name is Justin Costanza. I'm the school president of Montgomery Catholic Preparatory School right here in Montgomery. And we have been providing education to the citizens of Montgomery for 149 years. And this program has helped us to continue to do that. And so what I want to say first and foremost is to thank you for the support of education, period. If we remove public and private and we focus on the kids, you are here because you are trying to provide education, period. You're here because you're trying to remove barriers. This program removes barriers to education. It may be one student at a time, but as the school president for 802 students right here in Montgomery, I know that this program is beneficial in the lives not only of those students and their families, but in our school. Our school is healthy, but it is also a piece of the education system in the state of Alabama. My wife is a public school teacher at Lee High School in the ESL program. We eat, breathe, live education, and I see the struggles on both sides, and I understand what you face. To just reference the question about private schools, we're also have the opportunity to be supervised by the same sanctioning bodies that visit and accredit public schools. And so our private schools meet those same requirements. I know that's a concern. And then also those testing requirements that we are offering for all of our students to be able to meet the education level. I know that's a concern and one that we're able to meet. But on behalf of not only Montgomery Catholic, but all the schools that receive these funds, these opportunities, but more importantly, these students, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costanza. Ms. Hooks?
Good morning, Senator Chairman Orr and committee members. Actually, Senator Smitherman and Senator Figurs has really expressed my views. I'm here today representing the Alabama Association of School Boards as its president, and I'm a member of the Macon County School Board, and I have a long history as a former teacher, a retired teacher, of being the stepchild in public education, where on average, a school system can spend as much as $10,000 per special education student, and some spend as much as $15,000 to $20,000. $10,000 scholarships would do little to help students with special needs. There's no requirements. There was none until maybe I heard today about following IDEA, but we cannot afford to keep taking from public education. And the Alabama Association of School Boards opposed this bill, and we fervently ask that you reconsider diverting funds from public education. For once, we need to stop being the stepchildren of this state and start funding public education the way it should be. Everybody is entitled to a public education. Everybody can't get non-public education. Thank you so much for allowing me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Hooks. Next, we have Andy Ryan, and then on deck, we'll have Bart Reeves. Mr. Ryan?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, committee. I'm Andy Ryan, and I'm here on behalf of the students that we have on scholarship with the Alabama Opportunity Scholarship Fund, and joined with some of the other SGOs here today. Primarily just wanted to express my gratitude for what you've done in this bill to historically expand options for low-income families around the state. Every year we open up our application process in the spring, and we have to turn away thousands upon thousands of families who live all across the state in your very districts, who simply are looking for some type of education option that they've never been provided. And this bill goes a long way in expanding those options. So did want to just thank you all so much for that, and give a special thank you to the Education Policy Chairman for making those amendments happen today as well. But appreciate what you're doing historically for our families, our low-income families around the state, and now with our students who have unique abilities. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Reeves? And next, we have Pam McLemore, if you'll be ready.
Senator Orr, Chairman Orr, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Bart Reeves, and I'm with the Alabama Association of School Boards. This morning, I stand before you to express our concern about the proposed expansion of the Alabama Accountability Act. This expansion would call for additional tax credits with the potential up to $60 million. Although this seems like a small amount considering other tax credits and tax cut legislation, at the end of the day, it's another hit to the ETF. Whether it's 30 million, 40 million, 60 million, these potentially add up. With that being said, it's important that we consider the broader context. We look at the big picture, so to speak, when reviewing this and other tax-related legislation that has potential implications on the ETF. Just last week, Senator Orr indicated that tax exemptions, tax cuts, and also tax credits legislation is fast approaching $2 billion that have been introduced. Over 35 pieces of legislation are presently in the pipeline. Although these initiatives are undoubtedly well-intended, they can't help but negatively impact the ETF by lowering the ETF cap. What do I mean by the ETF cap? By giving these credits, you're basically reducing the available funding year after year for public education. For every piece of tax legislation introduced, I can't help but think back of Representative Danny Garrett's 50-state tax comparison presentation. According to his presentation, Alabama holds the distinction of being the second lowest tax state in the state. With that information, it seems to me that we would see less legislation, not more, when it comes to tax credits and tax cuts. As state leaders, we just simply and respectfully ask you to be mindful of every time we pass legislation that results in tax credits or cuts, that we are essentially taking funds away from the ETF.
All right, the bell has sounded up
Thank you,
here,
sir.
Mr. Reeves.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McLemore, you'll be the last. The clock is running. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am the executive director over at Montgomery Christian School, where we are able to provide academically challenging education for those with limited school choice. Right now, we have 99 elementary students, K through 5th grade, and we have a waiting list of just about that. We have over 50 people waiting to be able to have school choice. We serve those who are under-resourced, and we are so grateful for this ability to be able to go into Montgomery and meet with those parents. Really, there are two purposes to Montgomery Christian School. The first one is to serve those with limited school choice, and the second one is to partner with parents who really do want the best for their child. We have teachers who are intentional. They make sure that they are studying not only their students and building relationship with their families, but also intentional and purposeful in educating and choosing curriculum that is best for their families. Again, I thank you for the ability to be able to educate students, especially those who come from under-resourced homes and parents who really want the best for their child.
Thank you, Ms. McLemore. All right, that concludes our public hearing. We've got a substitute before us, an amendment. It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Senator Amendment.
are these the three amendments that
Yes,
these are the three that we?
These are the ones you and Senator Chastain talked about.
Senator Albritton? Senator Butler? Senator Chastain? Senator Figures? No. Senator Gudger? Senator Hatcher? Senator Hovey? Senator Melson? Senator Roberts? Senator Schofield? Senator Sessions? Senator Singleton? Senator Smitherman?
Aye.
Senator Wagner? Senator Allen? Senator Orr?
14 ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstention. The amendment is adopted. We're on the bill. Is there a motion? Senator Gudger moves. Is there a second? Second, Senator Roberts. Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Albritton? Senator Butler? Aye. Senator Chastain? Senator Figures? No. Senator Gudger? Senator Hatcher? Senator Hovey? Senator Melson? Senator Roberts? Senator Schofield? Senator Sessions? Senator Singleton? Senator Smitherman?
No.
Senator Wagner? Senator Allen? Senator Orr?
Thirteen ayes, 3 nays. The bill's given a favorable report. We're going to jump around. Senator Jones, I think, is behind us, come flashing out to the front of the committee. Senate Bill 298 at the very bottom of your agenda. Senator Jones has a substitute that I think is going to be passed out at this time. It doesn't make a lot of, it's big and fat, but it doesn't make a lot of changes. Senator Jones, tell us about your bill. Tell us about your substitute.
Sure. This substitute makes one minor change.
I'd call it a major change, but.
Well, yeah, okay. In terms of the whole bill, it's a small part, but it is a major change. Fair enough. What this bill does is it's dealing with outdoor recreation. You may have heard the Hoover Institute report identified outdoor recreation as the #1 untapped resource for the state. I think most of the members are familiar with what the bill does, but basically we established a statewide master plan for a greenway system, and then we incentivize local groups on the ground to build in tandem with that master plan. And we do that through grants for the property owner and grants for the organizations that are building. So this is the major change that was in the bill. We had a tax credit portion. We worked with Senator Orr. We changed that to a grant subject to appropriation. So that's the gist of the bill. And since it does deal with revenue, that's why it's coming through here and not through tourism.
So Senator Gudger has offered the substitute. Is there a second to the substitute? Second by Senator Roberts. And the big difference is this sets up the the vision for the interconnected trail system. The original bill had a tax credit, $10 million. Senator Jones and I got together and I said, you know, had a problem with that. So this would be subject to an appropriation. So we would have to appropriate whatever is going to go into this program and make that decision year after year after year as to whether we want to spend this the people's money in that regard. Senator Smitherman.
I have, I guess, a committee chairman's question. Why do you have problems with them using the 10 million? We get ready to get 20, 30 over there to these folks. Now, what is the problem with these giving away their money? You know, I mean, we just taking it from the kid. What I just trying to find what the problem, why this is a problem and that ain't a problem. What I just said, I want to understand the difference. That's all.
Well, okay, I give you an answer.
Okay.
If you're talking about the bill that just passed out, that one goes to school children. This is a little bit more distant than the education of children, albeit it would help in their physical health if they're out on the trails, biking and walking and whatever. It'll help all Alabamians, not just school children.
So what the distinction, that's a general term, but what we're saying is that it goes to private kids over there, and I'm talking about the last one, and we're saying that the public kids don't get any of it. That's what we're really saying. You know, because we use the broad term of children, yeah, but we need to make the distinction that it goes to private children. It don't go to public children. Isn't that correct?
Are you talking about the
that money right there?
Chastain bill?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to go to children, most of whom, if not all, are in public school
now,
already.
But they won't be in public school. But that's why these
looking
folks
for options.
That's why all these folks out there.
Okay.
Again, if you raise your hand, I bet you there ain't 5 people out there that's standing for public schools. I bet you everybody else is out there to get their hands on that money.
I don't
you know,
about
that's
that.
all it is. Thank you very
All right,
much.
we
Thank
got
you, Mr.
the
Chairman.
substitute before us. It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll on the substitute.
Senator Albritton, Senator Butler, Senator Chastain, Senator Figures, Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Melson, Senator Roberts, Senator Schofield, Senator Sessions, Senator Singleton, Senator Smitherman,
Aye.
Senator Wagner, Senator Allen, Senator Orr.
All right. 16 ayes, 0 nays. Substitutes adopt. Any objection? Is there a motion on the bill? So moved. Senator Allen, second Senator Hovey. In objection to previous roll, seeing none, 16 ayes, 0 nays. Senator Jones, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bill's
Mr.
given
Chairman,
full
members of the
report.
committee.
All right, let's move up one to Senate Bill 300, Principals. Alabama School Principal Leadership and Mentoring Act. This is a bill that filed yesterday. The plan or the intent is to create a pipeline of principals going through, even identifying people who aren't yet assistant principals, moving them into assistants if that position's available in the school system, and then the principals through training and professional development. Worked with class and Dr. Vic Wilson, who's here, I think, and appreciate all their support, but I think it'll be helpful. There is a stipend in here once they finish the training to help with compensation with principals. And when we adjusted the salary matrix last year, it created a little bit of tension, and we need to certainly compensate those in leadership. Senator Smitherman had his hand up first. I'm going to go to him and then come back over to you, Senator Singleton.
Do we have a fiscal note if it is? What is the fiscal note on it?
It depends on how many principals are going to receive the training and go through the program. The all-in cost is around assistants and sitting principals is around $20 million once it's all in, $20 million. So it's, but don't know that all will take the opportunity. Senator Singleton.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, one of the bigger problems I hear from my schools are being able to have assistant principals.
Yeah.
Based on this divisor, the number threshold that they have. Are we lowering the threshold in this bill or any other bills?
This would just
dealing with principal won't help us with the assistant principals?
not the number. It'll help with compensation for the assistant principals, and there's a $5,000 stipend that's put in here. But it'll help. But as far as expanding the number, no, this does not. Now, we did for you all, and I didn't mention it and should have, and that's on me. We did lower the divisors in the budget that this group passed last week for middle school grades. So you should know that. And I think the teacher count on that was another 100 plus educators because we lowered those divisors for the middle years in schools. So that'll help. But as far as principals, it may trigger, or assistant principals, it may trigger one or two more in the middle years, but not.
Yeah, I'm just hearing a lot of problems from, because when you start looking at divisors at the high school level and in the middle school level, the problem is with discipline is not having enough assistant principals on hallways to help because of where we are with it.
You are spot on, and you know, let's work on that next year, and we'll put that at the top of the. We accomplished a lot in this year's budget, and we'll make that a priority next year, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we've got the bill before us. It's I'll move it. Is there a second? Senator Roberts. All right. Any further discussion? Any objection to the previous roll, which was unanimous? All right. Seeing none, 16 ayes, 0 nays. The bill's given fair report. Moving to the SB 299. This is a bill that takes any tax exemption or credit and that does not have a sunset on it, puts a 5-year sunset like we did for the economic package that just came through, the Jobs Act and those pieces of legislation as is standard. Actually, in true confession, two of my bills are on this list, the irrigation one and the 2011 Jobs Act that does not have a sunset. So I would, you know, that's it in a nutshell. Doesn't get rid of them, just puts an eventual sunset on them in 2028. Reconsider at that time. Senator Gudger moves, seconded by Senator Hatcher. Senator Smitherman.
This, the last one, the first one we did in here, giving away all that money, is a sunset on no tax credit for them. The first bill is a sunset tax credit on them.
I don't think so. Again, that I would say was children and education. This is corporations and jobs.
So we don't have anything on that list that deals with children and education that's got a sunset on it?
Okay, I don't know if I understood your question.
Based on what you said, what it was for, do we have any bills that's going to be affected by this sunset bill?
This one.
That's yes, or any other one that has a sunset on funds that we have provided for education in any realm, college, here, the special little programs we have.
Yeah.
Is it any sunsets on them?
I'm going to look over, not to my knowledge, I'm going to look over my shoulder and look at Ms. Stallworth and see if she recalls any that.
Tax incentives.
Not talking about corporate, but the education. She says not that she knows.
Not.
Now, we did circulate an amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I think she said she hadn't been able to look yet. It doesn't. I don't think that she said. I ain't speaking for her because she there.
Right.
You know, as a lawyer, I can say that because you can cross-examine her here. It ain't hearsay. So you may ask her what you want, but I'm saying to you, my understanding, she hadn't had the time to verify that. And she can say, well, I'm saying the right thing or not. If you turn around, she'll say yes or no. So if we hadn't, I don't want us making no blanket statement that it ain't. See, she had not verified.
Did not.
That's right. And I'd like to know that before these bills hit the floor, whether that is the case.
Okay. Be glad to. There was an amendment, members. Let me back up. We had a motion second on the bill, but we want to adopt this amendment. There was an oversight. This came from the Department of Commerce. It would be a friendly amendment. It's one paragraph. It's been moved by Senator Melson, seconded by Senator Allen. Any objection on the previous roll on the amendment? 16 ayes, 0 nays. Amendment's adopted. Back on the bill. It's been moved by Senator Gudger, seconded by Senator Allen. Any objection to the previous roll? Seeing none, 16 ayes, 0 nays. All right, we are on the last bill of the calendar, SB 202. We got a public hearing. Let's roll into that quickly. You've got 2 minutes to speak. And we'll go back and forth. I've got first as a proponent, this is the Price Act, Jennifer, somebody Wilkinson? Wilkinson. All right. And then Sally Smith, you are next. Okay, go ahead. 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Wolverton from Madison, Alabama. I'm a mom, an engineer, an entrepreneur, a homeschool parent, and I'm here today to talk to you about my neurodiverse children and why they need the Price Act to be passed now. Have you ever had to choose between your child receiving good grades and them not being sick during testing week? I have. You see, the IDEA Act that comes down from the federal level doesn't require schools to accommodate children with good grades. My straight-A student got off the bus in the 4th grade all week and went to sleep. She slept all night until the next morning, just being awake enough to go back and take the next test. The only time she woke up that week was to go stand over the toilet. The assistant principal told me there was nothing that I could do besides go to Washington, D.C. and fight to change the IDEA Act. Have you ever worried about the decibel level in a room when you send your child out into the world? I do. 2 of my children wear sound-canceling headphones. Schools are noisy and overwhelming for some students due to multiple sounds happening at once. A neurotypical person filters that out and it doesn't harm us. My son just underwent a $3,400 sensory therapy that we paid for out of pocket. As a homeschooler, the schools don't have to support our kids, again, according to the IDEA Act. But I can't put them back in because then they'd have to do your harmful testing. Anybody with high anxiety is harmed by your testing program. How much are we paying to fix mental anxiety in our children? Maybe that money could go fund the Price Act. My children deserve their funding. I asked my kid's neuropsychologist what it would look like if I sent my middle schooler to public school next year. She told me that I would need to get the IDEA book of statutes, scuff it up a lot, put tabs in it, make it look like I know everything that's in it. That was the only way I might be able to get services without bringing in an expensive advocate. Do you know what an advocate is? That's a lawyer.
Okay, we got 2 minutes there. Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson. Thank you. We got Sally Smith. Let's please not applaud. Let's just roll through this quickly. Ms. Smith.
Thank you, committee, for giving me a few minutes to share school board's concerns with the Price Act. The speakers behind me will give you facts and figures. Believe it or not, I want to give you a little philosophy. Why do we have public education? It's because we want informed citizens. We, the people, through you, the legislature, have decided education's so important, we made it compulsory. This committee and this body passed almost a $9 billion education budget. We think it's important. And this committee and legislature literally passes scores of laws of what we think education should be. Things like 4 years of science, 4 years of math, 4 years of English, social studies, computer science, passing reading by the 3rd grade, character education, cursive writing. If you take an ESA, none of those things are required. We also do things to protect students. We have background checks. We have comprehensive drug education. We have sex education based on abstinence. We prevent bullying, again, to keep students safe. Zero of that is in the Price Act for those students. So the fundamental question is, if these parents want to choose things different from what you, the legislature, has said is important, that's their right. But why do we have to pay for it? We don't think school board should be paying for that. We don't think the public should be paying for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, we got Becky Garrettson, and on deck is Arthur Watts.
Good morning. I will focus my comments on the fiscal issues of the Price Act.
As you can see here, it costs about $13,500 a year to educate a student in Alabama. You can hold that up. However, Price students will be educated for about half that. $6,900 is the state portion of funding. When a student leaves the public school and enters Price, that school keeps all the federal and local dollars. That's a net gain for public schools. They will still get the money, but no longer have the student, which will mean their per pupil spending can go up. States are moving to universal ESA programs in record numbers. But with all universal programs, the net costs are up front. That's why we need to pass Price this year while we have budget surpluses. In your Price packet, you will see that 28 studies have examined the financial impact for taxpayers and public schools. 25 of those studies showed that school choice programs save taxpayers money. 3 found that they were revenue neutral, and 0 found that they had a negative fiscal impact. The Price Act provides strong financial accountability and transparency. In Section 9, parents must agree to use the Price funds only for qualified educational expenses. Every expense and vendor must be approved. Price utilizes an online app that's connected to the student's account. So when it's time to make an expenditure, the money moves directly from the ESA to the vendor, and we can see exactly what was purchased. Audits can be done at the snap of a finger. And by the way, Arizona uses this system, and they have found that 1% fraud rate, less than 1% fraud rate. Price isn't just about parental choice. It's also about improving Alabama's public schools. We've tried improving education from the inside with new programs, testing protocols, teacher trainings ad nauseum. But we've not tried statewide private school competition, and Price will provide that. 31 of 33 empirical studies find that choice improves academic outcomes at public schools. We have the proof that it works. The Price Act provides families with solutions to our failing school problem, woke agendas, safety, and bullying.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garrettson.
Thank you.
Mr. Watts. And on deck, we have Justin Bogey. Mr. Watts.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, passage of this bill will basically dismantle public education and truly hurt public education students throughout the state of Alabama. We'll basically have 2 education systems, a public education system and a private education system. And of course, the private education system, Mr. Chairman, will not have the regulations and the accountability that is required and governed by the public education system. Passage of this bill will basically wipe out all of the gains that we have made over the last decade, such as decreasing those same teacher devices that you just spoke about a few minutes ago, Mr. Chairman. And let's talk about the true financial impact of this bill. We know that this bill could possibly cost the Education Trust Fund public school kids over $600 million. Let's just say just half of this bill was implemented, $300 million. And let's say that you had a teacher that made $50,000 a year, benefits, of course, health insurance about $9,600. Then you got retirement, Social Security, Medicare. Let's say the total be about $70,000. $300 million divided by $70,000 would cost over 4,200 teacher units, Mr. Chairman. And let's say the entire $600 million was taken into account. 600 million divided by $70,000, over 8,500 teacher units lost. We're talking about overcrowded classrooms throughout the state of Alabama, Mr. Chairman. And I find it quite interesting that a few weeks ago, there was a gentleman that spoke on behalf of private schools from the Heritage Foundation. And one of the senators asked that gentleman, he said, how much would it cost public education in 3 years? The gentleman said it would cost public education about $400 million. Do you know, Mr. Chairman, that $400 million to public education would cost over 5,700 teacher units, overcrowded classrooms? Mr. Chairman, I stand in stark opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Mr. Bogey, and next we have Allison King. Miss Allison King next.
Chairman Orr, members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Justin Bogey at the Alabama Policy Institute. And just in general, API believes that parents should have the freedom to use their state tax dollars to ensure that their children can receive the highest quality of education and that it's suited to meet their specific needs. We think that's important. This is an issue with overwhelming support from the people of Alabama. Recent polling found that 78% of registered voters were in favor of expanded school choice options. I'd like to just briefly talk specifically about some of the costs of this. You know, one of the common refrains that we hear is that it's too expensive, that's going to destroy public education in Alabama. But, you know, from our point, that's really not the case. Over the last 5 years, tax collections to the ETF have grown by 54%. We're really in a unique position to make this investment into education and to hopefully improve the academic outcomes for students of Alabama. As it's written right now, the introduced version, this has, you know, as we've heard, almost a $600 million fiscal note on it. But we believe that there are certain issues that should be taken into consideration with that. That estimated that 5% of all public school students would take part in this plan, that all private school students would take part in this plan. But we have evidence from 31 states who have already done some form of school choice that says that that's not what the real world looks like. Ultimately, we don't know how many people will take advantage of this, but in states that have already done it, the average is about 1.34% by year 3. Arizona has been doing this for several years now. About 1.8% of public school students take part in this plan, and less than 30% of private school students actually participate in the ESA program. As we've already heard, you know, based on empirical evidence, this actually is revenue neutral or saves taxpayers money. And ultimately, what's most important is it's been found overwhelmingly to improve outcomes for students. Thank you.
All right, good timing. Next, we have Miss Allison King. And then we will finish the public hearing at this point due to time and let after Miss King. So Miss King.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Our most glaring concerns with this bill is the lack of accountability and oversight that is present. Nothing in this bill requires that money be spent on education at all, much less quality education. And the basis of the program is through an online payment portal on line 355, and it is a setup for fraud. In fact, the bill addresses fraud. It even says that some fraud is okay as long as it's not substantial. You can find that in line 436. The same is true for the service providers in line 691. Because of the overwhelming majority of parents that will be receiving these vouchers already pay private school tuition fees, Alabama taxpayers will be paying for most anything but private school tuition. It could be new iPads in line 531, ACT or SAT prep courses in line 536, even Space Camp in line 520, or Travel Ball in line 513. All of these are allowable expenses. Also, there's a double dipping component. The bill allows for the AAA to be used as well as a separate voucher. I don't know of any public school student in this state that receives double dollars. Also, there is zero oversight or accountability for the education service providers in this bill. All that is required of them is to sign up on a website, not give kickbacks, and provide a receipt. So I could go sign up on a website and name myself an education service provider, and there is no review of my curriculum, service materials, or anything else. I do have several speakers who have spoken of the Arizona model. I have a link from their state superintendent that outlines how this has worked in their state and the challenges that go along with it. I'll be happy to share with any of you. I've spent 10 years as a classroom teacher and local school administrator, and I know firsthand the kind of impact this will have. Strong communities are built around strong public schools, and if we don't keep our strong public schools strong and we continue to siphon dollars that are needed, our communities will fail in addition to our public school system. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. King. Chairman. All right, Mr. Chairman. Let me get to the sponsor. Now, let me say this. Senator Stutz and this bill, as most all of you know, I think went to education policy. Senator Chastain saw the fiscal impact, Chairman Chastain, and Senate re-referred it over to this committee because of the fiscal impact. I will tell members Senator Stutz has brought and has an amendment that would cap the amount at $50 million. So that amendment's going to be circulated, and I would be supportive of that. I've told Senator Stutz, I wanted to give him a hearing today, let the committee vote as the committee will. You know, I told him it was necessary for him to work his votes. I don't have a problem moving the bill along as chairperson, but I've told him the $50 million cap may not be we may have to go lower. I'm also interested to see what Chairman Garrett in the House has filed based on the Utah model in this case. And so I'm getting a side-by-side comparison of the Price Act and the Utah-based model that Chairman Garrett has introduced to see what the differences are with that. I've heard new things that Ms. King brings to light that I think we need to ferret out. But again, with the understanding of the sponsor, before the bill, if it is to get out of this committee today, before it hits the floor, we've still got a lot of work to do. It does not have, for what it's worth, and I say that with a smile, my good seal of approval yet. But it's a work in progress, and we're going to need to continue working. So, Senator Stutz, I see several hands raised. Let me have you say a quick presentation, and then we're going to move to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I do want to put that amendment on the bill as before we move it through, so we're voting on the amended version. But school choice is a vital issue. It's an issue that's been around for a long time. It's an issue that has been addressed in a lot of other states, and the Price Act has been worked on for a long time by a lot of different people, and we've looked at the models from the other states and have tried to come up with the best bill that we could possibly come up with. I'm not saying it's perfect, Senator Orr. I'm open to other suggestions as we move forward with the discussion. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has, but I would appreciate a committee member putting the amendment on.
Okay, we'll deal with that now. I've moved, and I have the amendment here. You've been circulated, seconded by Senator Roberts. If there's no objection, let's go ahead and put the amendment on. Clerk, call the roll on the $50 million cap amendment, please.
Senator Albritton? Aye. Senator Butler? Aye. Senator Chastain? Senator Figures? Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Melson, Senator Roberts, Senator Schofield, Senator Sessions, Senator Singleton, Senator Smitherman,
No.
Senator Wagner, Senator Allen, Senator Orr.
11 ayes, 3 nays. The amendment is adopted. Senator Stutz, you're finished. Question, Senator Smitherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have any questions for him. He could, well, I'm concerned directly to you, Senator, but this is the time, I think, for me to express my ultimate thoughts on this. I think that the speakers have made the case that this is not a good piece of legislation. I think they've done an adequate and outstanding job. We'll start with the simple fact of lack of accountability. Here it is. We getting ready to flunk third graders. We hold them to the highest standard, and we getting ready to send these people $600 and something million, and those kids can have no standards based on from the state. That stuff they talking about there, yeah, that's their own internal standards. But we're the one talking about sending money. We're the one that put all these stringent standards. I'm the one who had to fight, and thank God some of y'all supported me, to get a literature and just an extra year in the middle of COVID to try to get ready for some tests that they still ain't ready for. But we don't hold these people accountable for nothing. We open up the treasure coffins and to reach your hand in there and get whatever you want out of it. And then they get it and go do everything that they want to do, any way that they want to do it, meeting no standards that we set as a state whatsoever. That's lip service to say that we meet some standards, some are credited. We talking about the standards that we put in these schools on, every standard we put in these public schools on, they don't have to do anything on it. The next thing is this. I was just appalled when I heard the last lady with the pink dress on, get up here and say that what her name? Miss King. Miss King, that's her name. Right there, that lady. Miss King, her. To get up here and say that they can take this money and use this money for travel ball. And yet I can tell you the school name, Hemp Hill Elementary School. They ain't even got a lick of band equipment. I had to take these service grants and give them money just to have some band equipment. And we finna let these folks take our money and travel around the country and play basketball, volleyball, whatever it is. You know, that's ludicrous to try to sit up here and justify and feel good about a situation like that by opening up the coffers for them. The next thing is that I cannot understand how we can sit here and tell them that about the cost and about what we are providing and in public education, and yet we finna get these people $600 and some million to go to do the private thing that they want to do. I ain't against nobody who want to send their kids to private school, but you don't take no money from these public kids to reduce them to send them to private school. And I'm gonna tell you exactly what I see. Those kids that we're having those standards, we need to have excessive tutoring. This money needs to go for tutoring. This money needs to go for equipment maintenance. I can take you to schools that got leaks, 2 and 3 trash waste baskets that they got leaks, and we gonna get them $600 million. You know, I can, and the other thing is this, you know, now we got a little bill circulating out there where you want to flunk the little kindergarten children. That's right. You want to flunk them. You want to tell a parent that if you don't send your child to K and then they go to 6 and try to get in school, the same thing I heard somebody say, it's compulsory public education, that we going to flunk them and not let them go to 1st grade. All right, and it's ludicrous if anybody in here thinks that if you flunk a child in the 1st grade, you flunk a child in the 3rd grade, that a 20-year-old child gonna stay in school and graduate in the 12th grade. They gonna drop out, and is that the reason why we building these new prisons? Because that's gonna be a pipeline from there to prison on these kids. That's what you're doing by not funding them and giving these folks the money. You want to segregate it. You want to segregate all the folks over here who doing fine and who kids can they already afford to be able to send them to private school and tutoring and everything else. These school kids only can't even get to school. And you start saying, well, they can send them to school. It's not any transportation, and Montgomery might do it, Huntsville might do it, and Mobile, but I know Birmingham don't do it. You're a mile within the school, you got to get there the best you can. Buses don't pick these kids up. So the kid who you telling them got to be in the 5th and K can't even get to school. Their mama go to work at 5 o'clock. Then you got a latchkey 5-year-old that you telling them make the best way you can to get to school. You got a 3rd grader who can't even get to tutoring because the parents can't even get them there because they got to be at work. But yet we don't want to put the money and the infrastructure to set up so these kids can succeed at all these outrageous standards that we are setting. And we want to feel good about giving these folks $675 million. How do y'all go back to your districts and face these kids I'm talking about? I've been asking the question. How? You know, I mean, how do you do that? Turn your back on them for the sake of the folks who pat you on the back and make you feel good and say it's all right and get in the money. So no, that's what I had to say about this. This is a sad day. It's a sad day. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Hatcher.
Thank you, Mr. I promised my colleague, Mr. Stutz, that I would read the bill very closely with a open mind. I do have a couple questions, and I'll direct them mostly to you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of school options and the funding, from traditional public schools, public charter schools, magnet public schools, possibly even homeschooling, what are we looking at an approximation of what are we funding now for those particular schools I've just named?
Well, right now we've got the accountability law, and that's $30 million. Now, the bill that we just passed out of the committee raises that 10 million. Is that correct, Senator Chastain? To my knowledge, we don't do anything for homeschool or any other group. Ms. Stallworth?
And I purposely broke those down by categories.
Yeah, I don't.
I know
think there's any other category, Senator.
Okay. So, what is the funding formula that we use? Are we using it per teacher, per pupil?
No, it's based on the population of a school. How many school students if you're talking about the foundation program.
Correct.
So, and then you get, however many students you have, then that means how many state teacher units you get. And then as the numbers go up, then does that trigger a school counselor or an assistant principal, as we've talked about? It just is based on those numbers. And that's where the divisors, we put more money toward the middle grades. I think it was $11 million in the budget to reduce the number of children per teacher in those middle grades. And it translated into, again, my recollection, over 100 teachers, new teachers, units that would go to the middle grades.
Okay. So, and I guess in terms of last question before just making a comment, I've heard, the Alabama Accountability Act in terms of resources we've allocated to that. And a part of my concern, because we also have public charters and all these things, a part of my concern, I think I raised this with Senator Stutz, is whether or not some of the key components of what you are after in this bill could be somehow integrated into some of these many options that are already on the table. And that's a rhetorical question for now because we discussed it. I have to say, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, one of my concerns, and I think it's been raised by a couple of our colleagues, is I'm one of those individuals who, if in this case, if you are interested in decapitating public education, just say it so that we can deal with that. Because there's only a certain amount of money to go around. And a part of what we talked about as it relates to this, because I know others have done some work out there on my background. Yes, for the sake of transparency, I attended private schools. My folks made that choice and they paid it. They paid for it. In fact, my mama, my grandmother, and my aunt. And I am, again, not against people having that option. I'm just concerned about taxpayer dollars in that regard. And then the other thing I heard on just a day ago, one of our representatives in the House said to some of our support service folk who raised the question about cost of living adjustments, and her comment directly to them was, well, you need to consider going back to school to get a better education. And these are people who are working in our public schools. I'm very concerned, obviously, as all of us should be, that people who are charged with obviously doing things like this, bringing forth legislation with that attitude already existing towards folk in public education. And finally, I did hear someone use the term woke. It saddens me tremendously that we have found ourselves in a position where sound bites have replaced serious conversation. Ultimately, the opposite of woke is ignorance. People talking about woke agendas. I have a friend who lost a job because our people across the street didn't have the nerve to stand up to folks around that very issue. I'm a Head Start director. Our job is to educate folk. Let me offer this for consideration and I'll shut up. The term woke is defined as being aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially issues of racial and social justice. Now, having said that, I don't hold folk accountable for things they don't know. Now you know better. So this notion of going around saying woke agenda because somehow or the other it's a nice little feed to talk about that further divides folks is not helpful. Because if our goal is to educate our young people, then I think the goal, we should keep it on that. There may be other ways for us to have robust debates around how we can do better, but we don't do better when we create even language of division. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the, I'd love to get more information relating to those pieces I mentioned, because I'd like to do my due diligence for senators.
And let me compliment you on your blazer too, Senator. I like that. Very good chase there. All right. Clerk, call the roll. Well, I just noticed it watching you. Watching you. Clerk, call the, we need a motion and a second. Is there a motion? Senator Allen, is there a second? Senator Gudger. All right. Clerk, call the roll on the bill, and you've heard my statement. Senator Stutz, we're going to keep working closely. Appreciate the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, and you know, this is the next step in the continued debate.
That's right.
It's an issue that's not going to go away, and we need an open, public, fair debate on the issue, and this is the next step to achieve that.
Well, after the budget's out of my lap now, I've got time to concentrate on this, and I'm going to give it a lot more concentration. So
Thank you, sir.
Senator Albritton? Aye. Senator Butler? Aye. Senator Chastain? Senator Figures? Senator Gudger? Senator Hatcher? Senator Hovey? Senator Melson? Senator Roberts? Senator Schofield? Senator Sessions? Senator Singleton? No. Senator Smitherman?
No for the 8,500 teacher unions lost.
Senator Wagner? Aye. Senator Allen? Senator Orr?
12 ayes, 3 nays, 1 abstention. The bill is given a fair report. And I want to thank Senator Albritton and the General Fund people and apologize for going over time. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We are adjourned.